Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the database series with UiPath. In case you are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the latest videos. In the database series, we are exploring how we can use the database activities which are available in the UiPath. In case you are new to database and you do not understand the basics of database, here is one other playlist which will guide you how can you install the SQL Server Management Studio from scratch and will also teach you the basics of databases. In the last videos of the series, we have seen how we can connect my UiPath Studio to the database and we have executed some of the queries. Today, we are going to see how we can insert a data into the SQL Server with the help of a insert statement. So for that, let us quickly go back to the SQL Server. I am in my SQL Server Management Studio and I have one database which is called UiPath. That is the database which we have been working upon. And inside that I have something which is called a products table. Okay, if I just go and select star from products, right? So if I try to execute, you would notice that I have a table whose name is products and it is absolutely blank. I do not have any data here. Okay, now what is this product ID, product name, segment, price and quantity? It's a data which is related to some product. Okay, and if I talk about the data types, so this is how the table is created, right? I have something which is called db.products. Product ID is an integer, product name is a varchar, segment is a varchar, price is an integer and quantity is an integer. Okay, so this is the table which I have created and that is absolutely blank. Okay, now my requirement is I want to insert the data into the table. The usual way of inserting the data in the table is by writing a insert query. Right, in case you do not understand how do you write insert query, we have the dedicated videos where we are explaining how you can insert a data with the help of an insert query. But let's say I am working on an automation. Okay, in the automation I have got some data. That data can be in a website, that data can be in an email format, in an attachment, right? It can be anywhere, and the objective is to insert that data into the database, right? So how can we do that? So taking the same example, what I have done is I have created an Excel. Okay, so the name of the Excel is SQL insert.xlsx. It has something which is called sheet 1, right? Now let's say this data I have available, right? You can think this data, it is coming from an SAP application, it can be from a website, you can get it from an email, you can get it from a different other data sources, right? But let's say we want to put this data into a database. How we can do that? Whenever we read an Excel, we always get a data table, right? So the idea is if you have a data table, that does not necessarily mean that it has to come from an Excel. Any other sources which you have a data table can be used by the same approach to insert the data. Okay, so I hope the agenda is clear. We have this table which is called the products table, right? I'll just remove this insert. This is blank and I want to insert this data, product ID, all this 14 or 15 data into the database here. How we can do that? So let's first go to the UiPath Studio. Okay, so I am in my UiPath Studio. First thing first, this is the same project which we have been working from previously, right? Some of the prerequisite, the first thing is you need to have this uipath.database.activities as a dependencies available. Then only you would get the database activities. Okay, so today we are going to do an insert. So I'll go create a new sequence. I'll call this sequence as insert db and I hit create. Okay, so first my solution is completely blank and we want to insert the data. Whenever you will install this dependency, you will get a lot of activities for the database here, right? So one of the activity which we have already discussed is connect to the database, right? Before doing any operation on the database, first you need to connect your UiPath Studio to this database. How does that happen? That happen with this activity which is called connect to database. Absolutely simple activity. You just have to configure the connections whatever you wanted to use, and that will give you the connectivity, right? In the previous session we have already connected this database, so I'm just going to copy this same connect to the database activity and paste it here, right? So what happens in this connect activity? Let me just open this one. If I click on configure connection, you would notice that this is the connection string which we have created in the last videos. I'm quickly going to explain you what does this do, right? So this connection string is actually telling that in the laptop there is something which is called SQL Express, which is nothing but this guy. Okay, inside that you have something which is this one. See, laptop SQL Express. Go to this. Inside that you have a UiPath database, right? So if you see here, this is the data source. Initial catalog means which database you want to connect. So I am going to connect to the UiPath because that is where our table is, products table, right? And the next thing it has got is integrated security is equal to true, which means that I am using Windows authentication. All of this is explained in the previous video. So in case you didn't have already watched, so I would request you to understand and watch that video. That will give you the context of this complete thing. Okay. So for now, this activity has connected my database. Whenever we connect an database, the output of the connect activity is a connection object. This activity is breaking because in the property we do not have the DB connection object. So let me quickly go here. I'll hit Ctrl+K, create the DB connection object. Okay, now this activity ensures that my UiPath Studio is connected to this database, right? Not to this table, only to the database. Okay, connection is done. What is the next thing? The next thing is I want to insert the data. So if I simply go to the activities and I search here insert, okay, in the app integration database you have something which is called insert. Okay, if I keep my mouse over here, you would see that inserts a compatible data table. Okay, so you drag and drop this activity here. If you notice, the input is a data table, right? So the data table does not have to come from an Excel, it can come from anywhere. Okay, in the insert activity you have this guy which is called configure connection. You need to first tell it, right, where exactly you want to use it. You can always use a new database string, but if you have already connected, you can use the same connection as well. So if you remember here in the connect to the database, I have stored the connection in DB connection. So this DB connection will now go into the configure connection, and here I'll simply pass the DB connection. That way this insert activity now knows that I have to connect to this database and to UiPath table. Okay, I hope that is clear. The next thing here, it is asking me what is your table name where you want to insert the data, right? So what is our table name? If you see here, when I am doing this, select star from product, so that means that this is my table name. Copy this product and pass it here like this. Whichever table you want to insert the data, that table name would be available here. This is in a form of string, right? So if I go here, you can notice that table name is a string. The next thing this activity is asking me in the input is that give me the data table. Where is your data? What should I insert in it, right? And it is data table. Okay, where is my data? My data is in this Excel sheet. And where is this Excel sheet? This Excel sheet is located in my D data and here. So before inserting data, first I need to read the data from the Excel. For that, I'll go to the activities and I have to read the Excel. So I'm going to use read range, right? Now I am getting two read range. One is workbook and one is Excel. Okay. I have Excel installed, so I have privilege to use this one and that one. I am going to use the read range, right? In case you are new to Excel automation and you don't understand this, I have that dedicated playlist available on the channel where we are explaining each and every activity in a step-by-step manner. Okay, so please watch that video if you are new to Excel automation. So for this activity, workbook read range, I have drag and drop. It is telling me, give me your workbook path, right? So I'll go here, shift right click and copy as path. That gives you the complete path of the Excel and paste it here. You can always use this browse button as well to browse the file. Okay. Next thing, it is asking me that I will go to this Excel, but tell me the sheet name, because an Excel might have multiple sheets, right? Sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet 4, which one you want to read. So for me, my data is in sheet 1. So I'll copy this. This name should exactly match. Okay. I'll pass the sheet name here, right? The next thing is, what is the range? Which data you want to read? I want to read all the data. So I'll keep it as blank by just putting 2 double quotes, right? That way this read range understand that I need to go to this Excel, this sheet and read all the data. Okay. If you further go to the properties, you would notice that we have an option which is called add headers, which is asking me, does your data has headers, right? Because these headers are important, right? See, same headers. So I am telling me, yes, it has got headers. Do you have a password? You can put the password here as well, right? Now the important thing here, the output is a data table. Okay, so output of the read range activity is a data table. One of the most common interview question asks, what is the output? And people always say it's a string, right? So it is a data table. Okay, so I'll go here and in the data table, I hit Ctrl+K and I say dt underscore input, right? And that way UiPath is going to store all these data into a dt input variable, right? Now I have got the data, we have connected. In the insert, we have told that you have to go to this database and the data table will be now dt input. Okay, so hit a Ctrl+S and that completes the automation. What else we have here? If you see here, in the insert data table activity, in the output we are getting the affected rows. This means that how many rows were affected by this statement or this query, that you will get in this variable, and that is in a type of integer, which will give you 5 rows affected, 6 rows affected, 7 rows affected, right? Whenever we insert a query into the database, the same thing happens, right? It gives you that this many rows affected. Same thing here. So for this, I'll go here, hit Ctrl+K and I'll say that int underscore row affected. Okay, and this shows me that how many rows actually got affected. So I'll go here and I'll just add a log message activity right after this, so that I understand that how many rows got affected. Info level log, and I simply want to print that int rows affected here dot toString. Okay, that way I would understand the total rows which how many got inserted here. Okay, so this completes the automation, guys. So I'll hit a quick Ctrl+S. Okay, I am using a workbook read range, so I need to close this Excel here because that won't work. Let's quickly go to the database. I'll again hit a quick refresh, right? So I'll go and say execute. Table is blank. Go back to your UiPath Studio and run the file. Okay, now if everything goes well, what would happen? First, it would read the Excel, get me the data table, connect to this database via the connect activity, and the data table would be inserted, right? So if you see, the execution ended in 3 seconds. This 14 is coming from this guy, which says that 14, how many rows are affected? So it says 14. Okay, to validate the data, I can go to the SQL Server. I'll again execute the query, and you can see all the data which we have inserted is now available in my database. So that is how simple it was, right? To validate that, I can open this SQL insert here, and you can see that the same set of data is now available. So a single activity does the job for you. Okay, now there are something which you need to take care while working with this activity. The first thing is, your header should exactly match this thing. Okay, let me quickly go here and I'll delete all these data, and I'll put some ID here 111. I'll put sample, the segment is, let's say, test, the price is 79, and sorry, the it's test, the price I'll put 1000, and quantity I'll put 60. Okay, I have this sample record, but if you see, the name is exactly matching this thing. What happens if I simply go and make it to prices? Let's try to save this, close this, go back to UiPath Studio and run the file. And you would notice that the activity is saying me that you have an invalid column name prices, because it is trying to find that column, data table column, in this database, right? And it does not find that. So one thing which you need to remember here is that your column header should exactly match. What else? If I simply delete these two from here, okay, I'll simply delete these two column here. Now I only have product ID, name and quantity. I'll save this, close this, and let's try to see what happens. What I have done is I have actually deleted two columns from the inputs, and it says that I have inserted one record. Now let's see whether the SQL inserted in the first three columns or it has inserted in the proper columns, right? So for that, I'll go back to my SQL and execute this. And you would notice here, wherever the data was not available, product ID came product, product name came into the product name, and the quantity came into here, right? So wherever the data was not available, it simply put a null, right? That means that your column should have the constraint of that it should accept a null, otherwise it won't work, right? So two things which you need to remember here is that your column headers should exactly match. The second thing is, if you are having any data which is not available, it is going to put a null here. Okay, let me show you one more thing, right? So whenever we are inserting the data, I'll just make it to some other values, 222. Okay, and when I am reading the data from the read range, in this activity we have told it to add the headers. That means that it is treating this guy as an header. If I remove this checkbox, what has happened? It is going to treat this as a data, right? Now I have removed the headers. So if I go here and I say run the file, okay, let me close this Excel first. I'll save this. Okay, now what would happen? Basically my Excel is not having the headers. So now let's see what happens. The activity will go and it will try to insert the data. Okay, so robot started, and you see it is saying invalid column 0, column 1 and column 2. Why that is coming? Because when you do not add headers from a read range activity, it automatically add headers, right? How can you validate that? Just put a breakpoint here, okay, and run it in a debug mode. Okay, I'm not going to insert. I'll quickly show you why that error is coming, because you need to understand what is happening, right? So if you see the data table here, UiPath automatically has put a header of column 0, column 1 and column 2, and this is now treated as data. That activity is saying in your product table you do not have a column 0. That's why, right? So I'll close this, stop this. As soon as I go here and I change this to add headers, and again I run it in a debug mode, now you would notice that in the data table the first row is considered as a header, right? So I'll quickly show it to you guys. Here it is, product ID, product name and quantity. So this is what is getting matched with these guys, and that's how the data is getting put in the corresponding columns, right? So these are the things you need to take care when you are working with this insert activity of the UiPath database activity. Okay, so I hope you understand now how the insert into database activity work, and you know that how do you utilize the output as well. In case if you have any more question, any more doubts, feel free to know me in the comments, or you can directly drop me an email as well. Having said that, I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel, and happy automation.